Today we are going to talk about the identification of various muscles in your body. There are 605-ish muscles in the human body, and obviously you will not be required to know all 605 of them. However, there are some main muscle groups that I think are important for you to know. The muscles that we will discuss in this video and in your coloring packet then are the ones that you will be tested on going forward for this exam. So I would read the first two sections in the chapter, and then instead of going through the text, which will go through a vast majority of muscles, I've kind of narrowed it down into several main muscles that I think are important for you to know. In terms of muscle diagram identification, you'll need to be able to identify the muscle, tell me its origin and insertion, and then what its action is. You can color right along as we go through each of these muscles. And remember that the origin is the place where the muscle actually attaches, or the structure it attaches to. The insertion is typically the bone or the structure that is moved by the muscle. So let's get started with the head and the neck. So you can see here that I've colored each box to match where that muscle is. So if we start with the orbiculus oculi, this is going to be the muscle around your eye, here in purple, I suppose it is. It is going to attach itself, or its origin is going to be in the medial orbital margin, so inside that orbital bone there. And then the insertion, or what it's going to actually move, is the lateral palpebral raphe. The job of this muscle is to close your eyes. So this muscle allows you to wink, blink, or squint. Next is the platysma. This is going to be this muscle right here. It is kind of unique because it doesn't actually attach itself to a bone. Instead of it attaches itself to tissue. And then it's going to actually move your mandible. It pulls your lower lip down. It also is responsible for tensing skin on the neck. Next is the sternocleidomastoid. This is going to be the muscle in orange. Here's the lateral view. Here's the anterior view. So it kind of starts at the back, posterior, and moves towards the anterior of the neck. It's going to attach itself on your clavicle and your manubrium, and it's going to move the mastoid process of the skull. Its job is it flexes and then it laterally rotates your cervical spine area, your cervical vertebrae. And then the final head or neck muscle that I'd like you to know is this one right here in your cheek or buccal area, and this is called the masseter. It's going to attach on the zygomatic process, so this your big cheekbone there, and it's going to actually move your mandible. Its primary action is that it forces closure of the mouth, so it aided chewing. Next will be the muscles of the posterior torso muscle. So these are going to be looking at the body from a posterior point of view. Take note that both these diagrams are cut in half. So this side here is the superficial side. So this is the side you see if we just took the layer of skin off. This is going to be a deep view, so this would be taking all of this layer off. Same with this side. This is going to be a deep view, and this is going to be a deeper view. So we'll start here with the erector spinae. These are going to be this group of muscles right here. There's 3 of them. You can see the borders of them a lot more distinctly on your packet than you can on the screen. They are going to originate on the spinous process of vertebrae. And they're actually going to move then the vertebrae 6 levels up. So they will actually attach down here or anchor down here, and then they will insert or move vertebrae up here. So it kind of makes a little arch in how it's connected to your spinal cord. Its job is it allows lateral flexion of your spine. Big muscle of your back, underarm, through most of your back here is going to be the latissimus dorsi. It is going to anchor onto your spine, your ribs, and your scapula, and it's going to actually move your humerus. The action it causes is that it extends, it adducts, and it immediately rotates your arm. The trapezius is in green here. Looks like a triangle. It's going to attach onto spinous processes, and it will then move your clavicle and your acromion. And its job is that it laterally rotates, elevates, and it retracts the scapula, so your shoulder blade. And then finally we have the two rhomboid muscles. So the rhomboid major is in blue, the rhomboid minor is in that red strip right there. The major is going to attach on the lumbar vertebrae 2 through 5, and it's going to move your scapula. It helps retract your scapula. And the rhomboid minor is going to anchor on to C7 and T1. It is also going to move your scapula, and it also retracts it. So they both kind of work together. Easy to remember, major is bigger than minor. Next are the muscles of the anterior torso, so looking at the body from the front. In orange here we have the pectoralis major. It's going to insert on the clavicle and the sternum, and it's going to move the humerus. It flexes, adducts, and rotates the arm. Again, this is the superficial view, so the view if we just took the skin off. This is going to be the deep view, so this pectoralis minor would actually sit underneath the pectoralis major. It's going to attach on ribs 3, 4, and 5. It's going to move the scapula, and it functions to elevate your ribs and to protract the scapula, so it works opposite of those rhomboid bones or muscles. Deltoid here is in green, attaches to the clavicle, the acromion of the scapula, and it also moves the humerus, and its job is to abduct the arm. Biceps brachii is located in blue here. Most of you know where your biceps are. It's the meaty portion of your upper arm and the anterior part. It attaches to the scapula. It actually moves your radius, and it functions in supinating the forearm and flexes the elbow. The bicep has two heads. That's the bicept, the bi, and the bicept, which basically the head of the muscle is really just referring to the origin of the muscle. So it's got a long head and a short head. So there's actually 2 points of attachment for that particular muscle. You know, the meatier part of the muscle is called the belly of the muscle. The brachialis is located underneath the bicep. So again, here's a superficial view of where your bicep would be. If we cut this bicep and flap it open, then underneath towards your elbow area would be the brachialis, and its job is to flex the elbow. It's going to attach to the humerus, and its insertion, or the muscle or the bone that it moves, is the ulna. Next are your abdominal muscles. Again, paying attention here, this is superficial side right here. This is a deep view. This is showing you a side view. So this particular person would be looking or standing, looking towards the left, be looking at its left side here. So we'll start with the external oblique. This is going to be the outsidemost muscle here. Oblique meaning that it's going to actually be, the muscle fibers will move in a diagonal pattern, and you should be able to see that on your diagram here. This external oblique has been snipped right here so that you can kind of see underneath. Here, right here would be external oblique. Probably should have colored that one orange too. If you cut the external oblique and flap it open, then what you would see underneath are 2 muscles. The internal oblique, which is the most inferior muscle here, and again, look for muscle fibers moving in kind of a diagonal direction. Directly on top of that would be the transverse abdominis, which is going to have muscle fibers that run left to right. So again, here's your external oblique on this diagram. It's been cut here. Here's your internal oblique. If you cut your internal oblique, which would be right here, then you would see your transverse abdominis underneath. Muscles that run right along the midline then are your rectus abdominis. And you can see in the chart where each of those muscles attach and the bones that each of those muscles end up moving and the actions that they cause. Many of these are going to be involved in forced respiration, so when you exhale forcefully, you're going to be activating these particular muscles. Also involved in flexion and adduction of your trunk, rotating your trunk. Next will be the bones of your anterior arm. So we're looking at your lower arm, your lower forearm. Again, superficial view, intermediate, and then deep. There's 3 layers of muscles here. And pay attention to this diagram because it's showing you, the anatomical position, and we're looking at the forearm from that particular view. In purple here is the brachioradialis. It's going to attach to the humerus and it's going to move the radius. On the far side, you will have your flexor carpi ulnaris. Think of it on the ulna side, the pinky side. It's going to move your metacarpals in the hands. It's going to attach to the humerus and the ulna. And it's responsible for flexing and adducting your wrist, hence the name flexor. If you skip down to the palmaris longus, that will be the muscle in red here. And again, hard to see on the screen, that is directly next to the flexor carpi ulnaris. So it'll be the carpi ulnaris, the palmaris longus, and then the flexor carpi radialis. Radialis meaning it's going to be, you can see here that it goes to the thumb side or the radius side. If we cut all of these muscles and flap them back, you will have a view that would be similar to this. And then if we cut those and flap it back, way deep underneath is this last muscle called the flexor digitorum profundus. It is going to allow flexion in your finger joints, your phalanges. There are no intermediate muscles that you need to know. Moving right along to posterior arm. So again, look at the diagram. You're going to be looking at the back side of the hand. So if you were in the anatomical position, you'd be looking at it from the back. You have your extensor carpi ulnaris, which actually sits right next to the flexor, except it's going around on the other side. These are all going to be extending muscles, hence the extensor name. Next to that is the extensor digitorum. It's going to help extend your fingers. Up here is the extensor carpi radialis brevis, and then just superior to that is the extensor carpi radialis longus. All of them are going to attach to the humerus. All of them are going to move your metacarpals. Your digitorum also moves your phalanges. And their actions will be extension, just like the word in the muscle says. Extension of wrist, extension of fingers. This one's a little bit trickier because I needed a lot of different colors and didn't quite have that many. And you actually have 2 different diagrams, which is showing you a lot of the same types of muscles here. So let's start with the pectineus. The pectineus is in orange. It's located right here. Here's one view of it. This is going to be kind of a deep view of the muscle. This is more of a superficial view, and this is actually what it would look like on a dissected human leg. So you can see in the superficial view that the pectineus is kind of tucked underneath what will be your quadricep muscles. Here's the deep view. So it's probably the superiormost muscle in this particular series. Directly underneath that is the adductor brevis. It's a very small muscle there in blue. And then right inferior to that is going to be the adductor longus. So again, you can't see the brevis very well in this particular diagram. It's tucked under a little bit, but it would be in between the pectineus and the adductor longus. And this muscle that goes straight down your inner thigh then is the gracilis. The pectineus, the adductor brevis, and the adductor longus all anchor onto the pubis and move this bone right here that's in between your gracilis in the deep view and your adductor longus is called the adductor magnus. This is the superficial view. So laying, it would sit right on top of here. You have this muscle that basically crosses the leg. This is the sartorius in blue. It's going to move your tibia. It's actually going to attach to the tibia on the other side here. And then you have 3 muscles that are identified on here. You got your vastus lateralis, and think about it on being on the lateral side. You have the vastus medialis, which is down here, which would be on the medial side. And then you have the rectus femoris, which is smack in the middle. So vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, rectus femoris. And again, if we cut all of these, if we just made a cut right here and flip that open, then you would see this view. You can see some of the muscles up here, the pectineus, the longest, superficial, top view. These muscles, these three muscles, the rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, and the vastus medialis, are going to make up your quadriceps muscles, or your quads. There's one other muscle that's involved. Quad means four, so there's three you need to identify. But if we cut this rectus femoris, just the rectus femoris, and flipped it up, there would be a muscle in between or right underneath it. That's called the vastus intermedius, and that would be the fourth muscle that make up your quads. So your quads are in your front of the thigh. It makes up the vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, rectus femoris, and then one that you cannot see underneath here would be the vastus intermedius. And these are the great extenders of your legs. These are the bones of your posterior legs. So looking at it from a posterior view, so here's kind of, if you were looking through the back of your leg towards the front, would be where your patella would be. Obviously you're looking at it from the back. This is the gluteus maximus, your big butt muscle. Okay, right above that, superior to that, is the gluteus medius. There's also gluteus minimus, which is underneath here that we can't see and you don't need to identify. And then you have the three muscles that make up your hamstrings. You have the most medial muscle, which is the semimembranosus, so this will be on the inside of your thigh. Then the semitendinosus, and then the most lateral muscle is the bicep femoris. These all function to extend your thigh and to flex your leg. Here's a human view as well. So semimembranosus, tendinosus, and biceps femoris. And just to see it in another realm, here's this from the ethoshealth.com site. Again, semimembranosus, semitendinosus is sandwiched in between, and the biceps femoris. And these make up your hamstrings. So quads are on the anterior part of the leg of the thigh. Hamstrings are on the posterior part of the thigh. Next is the anterior and posterior views of your lower leg. So this is the anterior view up here. This is the posterior view, both a superficial view and a deep view. So in the front, the muscle right below your shin would be the tibialis anterior. It's going to dorsiflex your foot. So bringing your toes up towards your calves. That's going to be done by the tibialis anterior. Superficially, on the back of your leg, the big bulging calf muscle is the gastrocnemius. If you cut the gastrocnemius and retract that back, you would see this red muscle here, which would cover all the way down. That's the soleus. You can see it down here. So it sits right underneath the gastrocnemius. If you then cut the soleus back, right below that would be the tibialis posterior. So basically right behind the tibialis anterior. Oh, I'm sorry, on the anterior view you would have the extensor digitorum longus right next to the tibialis anterior. So those are the muscles of the human body that you need to be able to know. Identify them on the diagram, origins, insertions, and then what their actions are.